Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, the Emmy Award winning Bill Harvey. Are you looking for a book that would challenge your thoughts regarding higher consciousness? Or perhaps you're looking for a fictional sci-fi thriller series about the covert U.S. psychic program? Then today's show is just for you. Bill Harvey's here to share his award-winning books, Mind Magic, Doorways into Higher Consciousness, followed by 2 books in his Agents of Cosmic Intelligence series, The Message and Pandemonium, live to all devices. So Bill is an Emmy Award winner and media research industry leader. He has foretold and shaped the future of media for over 35 years. Bill's first book published was Mind Magic, now in its 6th edition. He currently has 6 books published, 3 nonfiction and 3 science fiction. His writings include the sci-fi series Agents of Cosmic Intelligence, is focused on helping individuals become more effective. In works of fiction, he demonstrates the strength of his characters in action and zooms in on the inner process these characters use. Bill's worldview is open-minded, scientific, inclusive of the possibility that the universe is conscious and that each of us experiences the consciousness of the universe as our own consciousness, and that reality at its core is consciousness with matter and energy being phenomenon projected within consciousness. In his nonfiction books, he provides experiments that the readers can do, which could lead them to the discovery that their hunches are meaningful and the universe might be trying to give us clues to each of us. So let's welcome to the show, Bill Harvey.
Thanks so much, Marianne.
My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about these books. Congratulations on all the accolades you've been receiving for this. I mean, people were really loving this work.
I'm so gratified by that. I can't tell you.
Well, I have so many questions. Why don't we start with your first book, Mind Magic? Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
It's kind of my notes to myself as I was growing up, as I studied my own mind and found that I was making lots of mistakes of different kinds and detected patterns in the mistakes and gradually came to practical solutions for how to avoid getting obsessed with something or angry or fearful. So I collected all of that. When I was around 30 years old, I put it into a book and called it Mind Magic. It's not magical, of course. It's, if anything, somewhat scientific, but it reads more like poetry to some people. It's like talking to yourself or listening to your mind. It's the kind of stuff that comes up when we're unguarded and talking to ourselves and being mindful.
Well, you're definitely ahead of your time because I know it first was published in 1976. And while that was a time of great expansion for consciousness, in many ways, it also wasn't very mainstream. Not a lot of people were talking about that as they are today. Is that kind of some of your thoughts?
Gosh, absolutely. The only book that was current at the time that I certainly read and many others read was Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now. That came out before my book did and certainly had some influence on me, a very positive influence, and as did all of his writings. There had been, of course, going back in time, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti, there'd been books along the way, going back to Epictetus and the Enchiridion. I think that was around 300 AD, but the tremendous number of books that are out on the market now about mindfulness, meditation, yoga, it's certainly needed. And it's not just my work. I'm just now part of an ocean of work that is helping to wake people up to what scientists call metacognition, being able to get above your own thinking and study it as if from the outside and therefore be more rational and balanced.
Well, I've often heard it said that if the ocean is consciousness, there are many rivers that lead to it. So
Mm.
people find that river that flows with them. That makes sense. And your book definitely has done that for so many people over the years.
Now, it's the thing that makes me happiest is to know that people are reading it and getting some benefit out of it. It's very difficult, particularly for adults. We've become so set in our ways, and each of us has developed our own coping system, some of which are maybe almost as good as mine or better. So it's a complicated subject, but it's hard to change habits, particularly when you've been doing them thousands and 10,000 times. That repetition gets kind of built into our nervous system. And so when we try to overcome depression or anxiety or whatever it might be, it ain't easy. And so every little bit helps. And I'm glad that some of the ways that worked for me are working for other people.
And I think when we get down to really the basics, when we talk about these habits and these belief systems that people carry, a lot of times they're not even ours. They could be from our grandparents, great grandparents, and so on. So we're like carrying everyone else's luggage with us as we go along.
Well said. Yeah, it's being externally influenced. It's reducing our own free will, our own independent thinking. And we don't know we're doing that. We don't know we've been conditioned, like Pavlov's dog. We don't know that when we were very, very young and dependent on our parents and feeling our way and knowing that we don't know anything, we're very, very influenceable. And so those early patterns are laid down, and after a while, it's like water to the fishes. We don't notice it. We don't notice that we have a bias in one direction or another. It's hard, even when it's pointed out to us, for us to gradually realize it.
We've been talking about Mind Magic, and congratulations. I mean, you're Emmy Award winner. So if we put things in perspective, awards are awards are awards, but my goodness, you've just received a silver award for this book. And how great is that? So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Well, so let's talk about your next book in the series, The Message. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it started out from two directions. One was I wanted to use fiction as kind of an experiment. Here I'd written a book, Mind Magic, which is nonfiction. And I was able to just share my thoughts and achieve some degree of benefit for people. But then I wondered, what if I tried to pass the same information through works of fiction? Would that add anything? Would it make it closer to life? Would it make it, you can go in a novel, you can go into people's heads. You can narrate what they're thinking. You can then show what their actions are. It's much more like life. I also was excited by the notion of going back to fiction, which is where I had started as a kid, sci-fi. But the other direction it was coming from was consciousness itself, which is occupied so much of my attention over my entire life, paying attention to my own consciousness, staying up late at night in bed, pretending to be sleeping while actually thinking and trying to figure things out. Consciousness isn't yet part of science. I mean, it should be, because there's a whole science of psychology. But psychology has, first it went through a period in about 100 years ago, B.F. Skinner, of behaviorism, where the thoughts in our mind were dismissed as epiphenomena that didn't really affect our actions. We just thought the thinking was affecting our actions, but actually it was just noise, and our bodies were operating the way they would operate mechanically. That wasn't a good theory, but that's just my opinion. But nowadays, now that we've had Maslow and we've had Richard Alpert and Ram Dass, his two personas, and a lot of other great psychology we're more at a balance point where some of it is about introspection. Most of it isn't. Most of it's still about taking measurements, experiments, which I have no quarrel with. But physics, which has had such an impact on our culture, the development of not only the atom bomb, but television and internet and GPS, all of it depends on quantum mechanics and relativity, the two great movements forward in physics. But those movements, other than at the fringes, have left out consciousness. I wanted to bring consciousness into the picture, and I thought I could also do that by means of fiction. So the message is about, ostensibly, the first thing we learn is that the U.S. has a secret unit called Theta Force, which is essentially the Army's psychic spy unit. And it came about in relation to discovering that the Soviets or the Russians have the same psychotronic division already. So this is being formed as the story begins. We meet a guy named Martin Williams, who is back in Afghanistan on a mission to try to end the civil war. And this is like 20 years in the future from now. And his hunches always seem to be right. So his commanding officer initially shuts him up when he comes up and talks about his hunches, but eventually learns to pay attention to those hunches. So he winds up being recruited to run this organization, Theta Force. But he decides that he's not the guy to run it. He wants to be the number 2 guy. So he talks the generals into letting his commanding officer, Tim Shannon, run the unit. And they agree with Williams's request not to let Shannon know that they almost gave Williams his command. So as we enter the story there, we start to see how the psychics are being trained by Williams to pay attention to their hunches, to even know that they have hunches, to pay enough internal attention so as to be able to catch hunches when they slip into the mind kind of surreptitiously. And so the book intends to be a vehicle for training people to do metacognition and perhaps to discover that they do sometimes read other people's minds and sometimes do have hunches that come true, precognition, actually, that those things actually happen under certain conditions. This all goes back to mind magic for a second. Mind magic is an attempt to get people out of the everyday state of consciousness, first into that observer state of metacognition, but ultimately into the flow state. And in the flow state, it feels like a magical, supernatural experience because things are doing themselves automatically. You're exceeding your own capabilities as far as you knew you had those capabilities. You're exceeding your own expectations. You're performing at a higher level than you knew you could perform at. So the same is true with the theta agents. Williams is training them to get into the flow state and to be able to perform at that level. So that's the introduction to the story. I don't want to go too far into the details of the actual events because I want it to be fun when people read it.
No doubt. I mean, it is something that when people do pick up and start to read, it is not what they think, which is really, it makes a very adventurous read. So tell us about the next book in the series.
The next book, as you say, is Pandemonium, Live to All Devices. And it's the sequel to The Message. The same characters are in Pandemonium. Now, the title, The Message, of that book came from the fact that there's a key event that happens fairly early in the story, and that is every psychic on Earth, not just Theta Force and not just the Russian counterpart, But every psychic, whether they're readers of tarot cards or whatever they may be, gets the same psychic message at the same exact time. And it lasts for almost an hour. And the message comes with pictures and words, and everybody hears it in their own language. And actually, everybody gets a slightly different message. But the general message is that we're all one consciousness. And it's one consciousness that's always been around and is playing every role. We think of ourselves as separate individuals, but each of us is really the original consciousness. So Williams gets the message very clearly, and it changes him. It puts him pretty much all the time into the flow state. And of course, his colleagues notice that. Now, in Pandemonium, this is now like a year later, and the story starts with there's a guy named Templeguard who's brought into the story. He appeared in the message, but he was always off stage. He was only appearing psychically. He was alive. He was actually fighting in Afghanistan and in other places and spying and getting caught and tortured and all kinds of things going on. But he's never in the main action on the message. But at the beginning of Pandemonium, he is the main character of that book. And so we learn that he is a secret agent, not a psychic agent. In fact, he doesn't believe in psychic powers. But the president, to whom he reports, he's like a personal spy for the president. The president assigns him to spy on Theta Force. And he says, but if they're really psychic and I'm not, how can I spy on them? They'll know right away that I'm a spy and spying on them. And the president reminds him of a test he's just passed, the monkey test. And the monkey test, nobody could pass it except Templeguard. They found this guy who was already working for them in the military, who would be the perfect spy to spy on psychics because he was able to not think of a monkey. That was the test. Don't think of a monkey. And they had a machine that could tell whether you were thinking of a monkey. And nobody else ever passed the test, but he did. And the president asks him, how did he manage to concentrate so strongly to be able to pass the test? And he admits that he was having an erotic fantasy. And they both laugh. And the president asks him how he came up with that. Seems to work. Great idea, Templeguard. But where did you come up with that one? And Templeguard says, well, I was being tortured, sir. And the president quickly changes the subject. So Templeguard becomes a spy on Theta. But to Theta, he's being inducted into Theta to toughen up the outfit. So that's the way that story begins. And I don't want to reveal how it unfolds, but I want to give that a little bit more of a hint on this whole series, the series of sci-fi novels, of which there are now 3 that have been published and another one coming out this year, is called Agents of Cosmic Intelligence. And the premise is that these are agents of the one consciousness. And they're on Earth to protect Earth against Perse. Perse being another powerful being that is spawned by the one consciousness as kind of a radical experiment to try to be a pressure test, so to speak, a kind of an adversary. So the adversary has started a war cosmically against the forces of the one consciousness. And the one consciousness has reacted by creating the agents as a team to essentially keep Perse from causing suffering and on Earth to reduce suffering as much as possible without interfering with the game. And the game is to allow Perse to run wild and do whatever he does, but to try to get him to come back into realization that he himself is part of the one self that he's trying to fight against. So these theta agents, 4 of them, Williams, Templeguard, Tim Shannon, the guy who became the boss of the unit, Theta, and Shauna Moon, those are actually agents of cosmic intelligence. They don't remember that. They just think they're human beings, but they're actually agents of cosmic intelligence with more powers than human beings have, but they don't remember any of that. And there's another member of their original team who's actually on the Russian side, and she doesn't remember that either, although she's got a bit more of a memory of it than the 4 Americans. I think I'll stop there so I don't give away too much of the story.
Oh, it's such a great story. And to hear that there's another coming out, how exciting is that?
I'm excited.
People are going to be on the edge of their seats for that one. So how did the idea of this series even come to you? Where did that thread start?
It was in the 70s. And, well, I have to go back actually even further than that. So as I was growing up, from about 4 or 5 years old, I started to pay a lot of attention to my own mind. And it came about because my showbiz parents had put me on stage. And it was while performing on stage that I discovered the flow state. And so I wanted to figure out what that was so I could get back and spend more time in that state. It just came every now and then, and then it went away just as fast. And I wanted to keep it. And later on, I also wanted to be able to describe it to other people. But while I was a kid, I rarely talked about it to anyone because I didn't think I could explain it, and they might think I was crazy. But I started to discern different voices in my mind. There was one voice in my mind which always spoke very calmly and quietly, and usually only when my mind was still. And it never gave me bad advice. And I started to learn to be able to detect that voice so that I could actually act on what that voice wanted me to do rather than on every single impulse. So then when I was 12 years old, I considered myself an atheist because I'd been reading all this sci-fi and also science. And I thought very highly of science, and I still do. And that led me to believe that God was basically superstition. And when I was 12, an idea suddenly popped into my head out of nowhere. I could tell that it came from some series of thoughts I had had, mostly images, but I couldn't recapture the thoughts and the images that led to this idea, which came in words in my mind. And the words were, I am God and so is everyone else. And it had the feeling of truth to it because it came from that place that only gave me truth. But I couldn't explain it. But it opened my mind to maybe there's a scientific way that can be true. Maybe the word God is misleading because I associate God with organized religions and organized theologies and beliefs. But what if I just assume that the universe is intelligent and that's the one self and that maybe it's playing all roles? That took me, incidentally, 20 years to get from that flash when I was 12 years old to a complete explanation to myself of how it could actually be true. And so in the 70s, I wanted to write about that. And I was going to call it The Theory of the Conscious Universe. It was going to be nonfiction. And then, of course, I wrote it. And I didn't publish it. And then I suddenly had the feeling that I wanted to turn it into fiction. And I wanted it to write a script, a movie script. So I wrote a movie script called Triple Agent. And it is now there's 2 books in Pandemonium, and it is the first book of Pandemonium, but I actually wrote it a long time ago. So that's how I got into writing the series of books/movies. I hope that each book turns into, the books are so packed, getting them into a 100-minute standard movie, probably each book would become 3 100-minute movies, is my estimate. But getting them turned into movies at some point is my real life's dream. That would be just such fun. And I think it would have potentially so much impact on getting people to drop their resistance. In our lifetime, and I'm quite a bit older than you, but I think even in your lifetime, really only over the last 20 years, the surveys are showing that in America, the belief in a God of some kind, which had been at 90% about 20 years ago, is down to 70%. It's been going down for the last 20 years. And I think it's partially because the picture that we're all given of God is so superstition-like, picturing him as being limited to one sex, for example. I mean, the very idea of God is unlimitedness. So it couldn't be just limited to one sex, but or one anything. But if we imagine the most powerful computer we can imagine, made out of energy, and that it's a living thing with self-awareness, that would be my concept of the real God, the one self that's playing all of our roles. So I wanted to depict this, and I ultimately wrote a book called You Are the Universe, and then my new book, A Theory of Everything, that are nonfiction. But I thought that fiction could have more of an effect, that emotion, you can't change people's behavior just based on reasoning. Emotion has to be involved, or there won't be real changes in oneself.
Such wise words, really, to move forward in. And it's interesting, we've come to this place in our time in history where a lot of theories of consciousness have actually started being proved by science over the last few years. So all that's coming full circle.
It is. I just, somebody just sent me an email yesterday about a guy who's written a book. It's called The Observer, which is interesting since I write about the observer state, the mindfulness state that comes before flow state. So the book is a fiction book. He's a doctor, and he's writing about what he really believes is scientifically true, which is that biology is the core of the universe. Biology and consciousness, a living consciousness. So of course I have to read that book. It sounds so close to my own theory. Perhaps they're identical. Perhaps they're identical theories. And then there have been other interesting articles just in the last 10 years about possibly the universe being a simulation. That comes very close also to my ideas that all of this is what the ancient sages of India called Maya. There's all this world of illusion that we're living in. And underneath, we're all consciousness, and we're all, in fact, one consciousness. But from the Maya, you can't immediately detect that. Makes it quite a fun game of discovering, kind of a God playing hide and seek with himself, herself.
Oh my goodness, Bill. I mean, we could talk for hours. I know we're going to have another discussion coming up on your new book. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
The website is a nonprofit, so it ends in .org, .org rather than any other ending, and it's www.humaneffectivenessinstitute.org, and it's got my scientific theories, my books, my blog, over 100 videos It's got a lot of fun stuff on it, I think.
A lot of great information. Well, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. I look forward to the next time.
Well, thank you, Bill. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new books, Mind Magic, Doorways into Higher Consciousness, followed by Agents of Cosmic Intelligence series, The Message and Pandemonium, live to all devices. Again, if you'd like to connect with Bill Harvey and learn more about his work and his books, please visit humaneffectivenessinstitute.org. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick message from our sponsors. We'll be right back after these messages.
Pandemonium. Fast forward 20 years. A U.S. president seizes control of all U.S. missiles, the power grid, the banking system, and every computer in America as he hides in an underground bunker. Pandemonium, a captivating sci-fi thriller where a hidden war, psychics, aliens, artificial intelligence, and transcendental love collide with the latest media technology. Pandemonium, live to all devices. Get your copy on paperback or digital. Free sample at getpsychic.org.
Are you looking to untangle life's riddles? Discover the profound teachings of Dr. Shai Tabali, renowned philosopher, best-selling author, and your guide to self-empowerment. With methods that harmonize psychological and spiritual principles, Dr. Tabali's wisdom offers a pathway to holistic transformation. Take that first step today and join thousands globally and embrace the journey to higher consciousness. Visit shaitabali.com, that's SHAITUBALI.com now.
Hello, Dr. Cutler here. Do you experience bloating, heartburn, food craving, bowel irregularity, food sensitivities, weight issues? If you do not digest your food, you may be deficient in macronutrients, which your body needs for optimal health. DrEllenCutler.com teaches that this is an enzyme deficiency. I believe the most important supplement is a full-spectrum digestive enzyme, Dr. Ellen's Way Digestive Enzymes. Hear more about it at DrEllenCutler.com.
Are you chasing profitability yet losing fulfillment? Let me introduce you to your solution, the Relaunch Company. I'm Hillary DeCesar, an entrepreneurial performance coach, fearless leader of the Relaunch Company, here to help put the pedal to the metal and relaunch your business your way. Visit www.therelaunch.com. Take the free quiz to learn 3 steps towards waving goodbye to burnout and hello to success.
The book Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, authored by Danny Carroll, is on sale at Amazon now. Licensed psychologist and psychotherapist Tessa Antia-John-Guerra commented, "This is one of the most empowering books on a topic of cancer you will ever read." Award-winning author T.L. Needham commented, "This recommended book can be understood by anyone seeking answers, hope, and alternatives to a terminal diagnosis. Buy it now on Amazon.com.
Are you feeling disconnected from your life and your body as a woman? Do you feel numb emotionally and/or sexually and just not sure how to feel really alive again, or maybe for the first time? Are you struggling with body and self-acceptance, especially during menopause? If you'd like to reclaim your feminine and learn more about women and gynecology and how it can help empower your life, contact Gina Cloud at www.ginacloud.com.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of fire department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, D-E-P-T, coffee.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.